magicians Penn and Teller, dictator Joseph Stalin, singer Brendan Urie. There's a common thread that ties these men and many others in our world together, and that thread is atheism. For me, I'm a strong Catholic, but I try not to be the first one to bring up religion in a conversation because I know how sensitive of a topic it can be. For that reason, I have friends whose beliefs range throughout the religious spectrum, and that's fine and good, but for this project, I wanted to engage with the communities whose beliefs are different than my own, but whose beliefs are also at the forefront. And that was what led me to engage with the atheist community, particularly with Dan Barker and with the Secular Student Alliance here on campus. So Dan Barker is a former evangelical minister turned atheist, and he's currently one of the most prominent atheists in American society today. When I interviewed him, he spoke about life having meaning because of a bottom-up approach. He explained it with this example. Say you have a relative who develops some horrible disease, and because of that, you grow up and find the cure to this disease. That's a bottom-up approach to life. That's not a top-down approach given by some master, but rather you finding meaning in life from what goes on around you. I also asked him about what questions his current views don't answer, and to my surprise, he was very enthusiastic about the fact that he has more questions and less answers. He explained this as, science thrives on the gaps in knowledge. With all those gaps filled, there's no more need for science and no more questions to ask, nothing new to learn, which I thought was a very good point. Finally, I asked him if he had any final words, and what he really emphasized was that there are bad apples in every group. Bad atheists, bad Christians, bad Muslims, bad Hindus, all of it. But at their core, everyone is a good person. And even though there's bad apples in every group, he didn't want to stereotype all believers based on that, nor for all atheists to be stereotyped on him. Overall, one-on-one, he was an excellent gentleman, and I really enjoyed talking with him. My second interview was with Trent Horn, who's a former atheist turned Catholic. And I know what you're thinking, why did I interview a Catholic for the New Community Project when I'm Catholic? I asked both of these men the exact same set of questions because I wanted to see how their different worldviews would provide different answers for them. So when I asked Trent about his current beliefs, he said that Catholicism provides him with a coherent worldview, as well as with answers to questions that he didn't have when he was an atheist, such as what is the nature of morality? When I asked him about any unanswered questions from his current beliefs, he simply looked at me and said, "What's going to happen tomorrow?" Which I thought was an incredibly poignant answer and very true. For his final words, Trent stated that he does these debates to show that there is credible evidence for Catholicism and also to show that we can engage our critics in a charitable way, which he said, I believe we'll be able to do here with Dan tonight. Which brings me to the reason that both of these men were in town. The Great Debate, Does the Christian God Exist? Co-sponsored by the Catholic Mavs and the Secular Student Alliance here on campus. This event was amazing, and if you weren't able to make it, I do have the link to the video, so high-key recommend. Overall, I was pretty impressed with Trent. Unfortunately, I was less so with Dan during the debate. Although he had emphasized to me that he didn't want to stereotype all believers, a lot of what he said ended up being derogatory comments aimed at you believers, to the point where some of my friends even who aren't faithful stated that they felt like he was personally attacking them too. Still, undeterred, I wanted to continue engaging with the community since this didn't really give me any different perspective. And so I reached out to Reagan Lucy, the president of SSA here on campus. And that was how I found myself at a Secular Student Alliance meeting. This meeting occurred shortly after the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, and so the meeting was really focused on discussing what had happened and what can be done about it. For the final question of the discussion, Reagan put up a slide that simply asked, what can we as secular humanists do in light of this? Light bulb went off in my brain immediately. She's a clever girl. You see, this connects to the McMillan and Chavez article, where it talked about how when people share values, that's what brings a group together and it makes them able to solve problems, engage with each other, and do well. See, Reagan knew that I was coming to that meeting as a non-secular individual. But by including a focus on humanism as well as secularism, she was able to bring me into the group and emphasize a shared value, as well as make me feel comfortable engaging with the group. And for those of you who don't know, humanism is the belief that people are human beings first and foremost, and that's what we should be taking care of each other on that basis. For me, it fits into Catholicism perfectly. For her, into secularism. And that shared value was able to bring us together. I also drew connections with the Aidan Pearson and Sell article, which, if you remember, was the Townies article, where the college students admitted that they were stereotyping the Townies, but still did it anyways. For me, up here I know that there's a solid difference between anti-theist, or against religion, and atheist, or without religion. But that line can still be blurred. That's still something that I'm working on, to be completely honest. I also drew connections with the Hooks article. In Hooks' case, she talked about the necessity of African-American men and African-American women interacting with each other. But I believe that this can be applied to people of different religious views as well. After all, atheism, Catholicism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim, none of them are going anywhere anytime soon. And ultimately, I do believe that all of us are just trying to make our way through the world as good people, first and foremost, no matter what our religious beliefs. So after the SSA meeting, Reagan and I were walking back to our apartments together, since they're in generally the same direction, and she expressed a genuine desire to see me at more meetings in the future. My first thought was, sure you do, you want to pull me away from my faith. However, I really truly don't believe that that's the case. I truly believe that she wants to see me more, that way we can engage with each other and simply be friends. And I know it sounds contradictory to acknowledge that first thought and then the second, but a friend once told me, your first thought shows how you were raised, your second thought shows who you are. I don't know if that's who I am yet, but it's definitely who I'm trying to be. So ultimately, I do respect people who share the common thread of atheism. Except Stalin. Let's get rid of him. But I do believe that we should base our attitudes toward people based on their actions, and that we should always lead with love.